In this video I will talk about the Siamese cat breed and explain everything about behavior, needs, care, health, compatibility with other pets and more. For almost 10 years I have 2 Siamese cats, but I also will use experiences from other Siamese cat owners and breeders that I personally know, and all my research over the years. First I will talk a little about the history, the appearance and colors. Siamese cats originated from Thailand and were first mentioned in ancient manuscripts around 200 years ago. They are always born white and then develop their color over time. The exception is a Siamese with the extremely rare color foreign white, since it stays white its whole life. Even though foreign white Siamese are completely white and have blue eyes, they don't have any problems with deafness and can hear completely normal. Siamese have always blue eyes, but their coat colors have a big variety. But that variety only stays within the point gene, which makes the color on the face, legs and tail the darkest. Except the foreign white color, of course, like I mentioned before. There are 2 types of Siamese: the traditional Siamese, which is also called Thai cat, and the modern Siamese. The traditional Siamese has mostly the head and body type of a regular cat. The modern Siamese looks completely different. It has a slender face, big ears and a long slender body. There are 2 ancient genes which are barely found in the breed nowadays. Number 1 is the strabismus or squinting. The other one is the curled tail tip. In ancient times those 2 traits were very common, but they were bred out almost completely by breeders of modern time. My Siamese Yozora was born with both traits by coincidence. She is squinting and has a curly tail tip, even though her brother Otani, all her other litter mates and her parents don't have those traits. Both traits don't bother her and she can do anything what a regular cat can. There is also a long hair version of the Siamese. It's called Balinese. Now I talk about behavior, needs and compatibility with other pets and children. Siamese cats are extremely playful, curious, active and love to talk, but also can be very stubborn and insistent. They are also extremely people-oriented, social and affectionate. They also stay highly active and playful till old age. So it's an alarming sign if a Siamese suddenly gets calm, sleeps or lays around a lot and shows barely any playfulness. Such calm or lazy behavior results from depression or sickness and pain. My 2 Siamese are almost 10 years old and are still active like they were with 2 years of age. A Siamese cat should never be kept without another fitting cat companion. They usually even love to be in a big cat group. It's the best to get another Siamese as a cat buddy, or a related breed like Oriental Shorthair and Longhair, Balinese or Peterbolt. Or a breed which is known to have very high energy, playfulness and, very important, the need to cuddle with other cats. Siamese love to cuddle with other cats, and if they get denied of that because the other cat was chosen wrongly, the Siamese will be unhappy. Usually it also won't go well with a calm cat as a companion, and fights are bound to happen. Siamese are in general highly sensitive and can show very quickly behavioral issues when they are kept as a solitary cat and or they feel neglected from their owner or have any other reason to be unhappy with their life. Depression and a complete lack of motivation, aggression, moody or grumpy behavior, being overly spooky, destroying things, a lot of howling and whining, relieving itself outside the litter box, fighting with other pets in the home, hissing, growling, scratching, biting, or even self-harm behavior are some examples which point to a big unhappiness of a Siamese. But as long as a Siamese gets a breed-appropriate and fulfilling life, there will be no problems at all, and it will be the sweetest pet you can imagine. Since the Siamese cat is so extremely sensitive, it's usually quite difficult to leave it home alone for holidays, even if a nice cat sitter is feeding and playing with the cat, and even if there is another cat as a companion. One whole day can work out. If it gets longer than that, it can cause very big problems. It's not rare that Siamese fall in such a deep depression that they completely refuse to eat anything for days and only start eating again when the owner is back. So that should be taken very seriously. I always take my 2 Siamese with me on vacation trips. With the right training, there's no problem to do that, though we only travel by car or bike. Taking public transportation is possible too. I personally wouldn't go on a plane with cats, but everybody needs to decide for themselves. If you want to see how my cats react to vacation trips, you can look into the pinned comment. There's, for example, our trip to the beach. In general, Siamese are very trainable and can learn a big variety of things with the right training. For example, going on walks and hikes with or without leash, various tricks, agility, and you can even train them to lose fear of water and to enjoy bathing. Though basically every cat can learn those things when done right, the Siamese usually learns it faster. The Siamese has also a passion for playing fetch, which usually doesn't even need to be trained. How to train a cat to go on walks, do tricks, agility, or getting used to water is shown in my tutorials in the pinned comment. In general, if a person wants to have a Siamese or already has one, he or she should be aware that such a cat needs a lot of daily play and more. Siamese need a lot more mental and physical exercise than regular cats and a lot of other cat breeds. With my 2 Siamese I play 3 times a day for around 15 minutes. We also go on walks and hikes every second day in nature, and that mostly off leash. Multiple times a week we also do trick training and similar. In general, I recommend giving Siamese cats access to the outdoors with supervision. Through going on walks and hikes, having a backyard with a secure fence or a big cat enclosure. When keeping Siamese strictly indoors with only a small balcony or similar, they usually show the behavioral issues which I mentioned in this video before. I also recommend for such an active breed to make a cat room or a big adventure playground. For this breed it's not enough to have only one big cat tree and some toys. I made my bedroom into a cat room with a giant adventure playground. There are a lot of big cat trees, a self-made catwalk and a lot more. I show in a tutorial how the cat room looks in detail and how I have built all the self-made stuff. You can find that in the pinned comment. There can be a characteristic in Siamese cats which can lead to problems in a multi-cat household. Their dominance, jealousy and possessive behavior, though not all Siamese are dominant. The dominance of a Siamese can escalate in such a manner that fights between the cats happen daily, and then it's quite often that such a dominant Siamese is labeled as a solitary cat and given away. But that doesn't have to happen at all, since the dominance can be kept in check very nicely with enough daily mental and physical exercise, enrichment of the home with cat stuff, training and a lot more. My 2 Siamese had a very serious phase of fighting when they were 3 years old, but I found a way to make them best friends again. Now they are almost 10 years old, and since almost 7 years they never had any fights or disputes ever again and are absolutely inseparable. How I made my cats best friends again is explained in detail in my tutorial about the multi-cat household, which you can find in the pinned comment. Usually Siamese cats get along well with other pets like dogs or ferrets. Of course only if they were introduced the right way and the other pets behave friendly and well adjusted. They usually get along well with children too, as long as the children handle the cats with respect and are gentle. Now I talk about the care and health. Brushing a Siamese once a week is enough. Taking care of the teeth is very important by choosing a healthy diet, since the Siamese is very prone to teeth problems. I feed my cats mostly a raw diet, which cleans the teeth, since the cats need to chew very carefully and for a long time. They get that 5 days a week, and 2 days a week they get high quality wet food, without grain, sugar and at least 60 to 70% meat. I don't feed dry food and I don't recommend feeding it either, since it has a high risk of causing kidney failure. And since it's a false claim that it cleans the teeth, there are no benefits for the cat, only unnecessary high risks. The Siamese can also have other illnesses, for example, different types of cancer, heart problems, and the mental disorder called pica. Pica is the appetite for stuff that isn't food, like cotton, wool, paper, plastic, and similar. The average lifespan of a Siamese cat is around 15 years, but they can get much older than that. If you liked the video, you can give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. I also will help if you have any questions.